I asked you in New York how long does celebrity for something like this lasts, and realized that mine expired about 4:32 days ago.
Fame is fleeting.
It is fleeting, yes. It was a special event. We mustn't take it too seriously. The weather or the prize. Thank you very much. It's great to be home. It's this theater that has actually created this for me. It's allowed me over the last 20 years to do almost anything I wanted to. The theater and the community have embraced that and that work. And with each successive time, I seem to get stronger and more comfortable with what I'm doing. And so it belongs as much to them as it does to me. And I really mean that.
For 100 years, the road to great success in American theater seemed to be starting in New York, inching your way up into productions, hoping to get a break, maybe meet Rodgers and Hammerstein and have them tap you on the head and make you a star. You went 2,500 miles another way and have arrived back where I think you had hoped one day. But I wondered if you, was that calculated? Get to San Diego, build your reputation, get to the top at a young age.
You may be sorry you asked this question. Yeah, what a great question. It's true. I had a break, a big professional break that came out of the blue. I was chosen to direct the Houston Grand Opera production in the bicentennial year of Porgy and Bess, the first staging of the complete work of Gershwin that had never been done before, not even in his lifetime. And as a result, suddenly, I emerged in the, at least New York community. I was guesting in the 70s in San Diego, but I was not here at the time. I was living in New York. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this Jack O'Brien guy appears to do Porgy and Bess, which was, I still think, maybe one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And there was some interest in me. And I was invited down to Joe Papp's office for one of the great interviews of all time. I mean, talk about the Wizard of Oz. I mean, there was this big desk and this extraordinary man behind it.
And you were at what age at this time?
I was in my 30s, early 30s, early middle 30s. And the interview went, he was going to do a black Antigone. And I think Cicely Tyson was supposed to play it. This was when Joe Papp was actually running Lincoln Center for a while. And all the money from the chorus line, because they were a non-profit theater, had to be spent. So he was doing these big productions.
That's a nice problem.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I did this interview with him, and he was scary as hell. And I was completely intimidated. And during the course of the interview, I realized how small I was and how vast he was. And that I didn't quite know how to get out of this. I didn't know how to arm wrestle this particular situation to the ground. And basically what happened was I sort of realized I was in the wrong place. I realized that in New York, there was so much activity. There was no place for me. And I thought, I'll never make it here. I'll never be able to get a job with Joe Papp. There are other directors directing in New York. I'm nobody at this point. I don't know what to do.
But there's something he saw in the work you did that made him bring you in.
He interviewed me, yes. I mean, but he interviewed a lot of people at that time. It wasn't just me. And bottom line was, sort of amazing. I serendipitously went to Mexico, and I was with some friends, and we climbed a ziggurat, which is a very scary thing because you go up, and it's very easy going up and coming down. It's terrifying because it's so steep. And I looked around, and I saw something I'd never seen before. The jungle is flat. There's nothing to mark height, altitude. And as a result, basically, people only build pyramids or things where it's flat, in the desert or in the jungle. But where there are mountains, they don't build tall things, right? And I looked over that terrain and I thought, oh, I see. I have to go someplace where there's nobody like me. I can't be in New York where it's really crowded. I've got to go someplace where my work is going to be isolated. And at that time, I was thinking about San Diego.
Were you feeling like you were resigning yourself to the life in the hinterlands
No.
at that time?
No, I don't think so.
It was very counter the traditions of get to New York and battle with the big boys.
Yes, but it wasn't about that. It was about the work that I liked to do. I loved the classics. I loved rangy, big work. I was one of the directors who loved to have a lot of people to direct, as opposed to just a kitchen table and 2 other people. I was really interested in all that. And you couldn't really find that other places. And I suddenly thought to myself, this is cool. I could actually do the work I'd like to do for Craig. And for that audience that at that time had already been looking at steady theater production for about 50 years.
Did you see yourself as distinctly different than Craig Knoll?
I saw myself as a continuation of the kind of work he liked. I loved Craig immediately. It's hard not to. He's an irresistible elf, and he's very fascinating in that respect. And I was attracted to the familial feeling that he generated in his theater, and the fact that people had a good time. That all appealed to me. So I thought, well, gee, he was very interested in my coming at that time. He'd mentioned it to me. He said, I don't know what kind of career you're going to have after Porgy and Bess, but I think you should think about this. And I thought long and hard and thought, you know, over the years, over the 10 years that I guested here, some of the best work I'd done in San Diego. And I decided, yes, that I should come someplace else and start my work. And I knew that Los Angeles was not interested, and I wasn't interested in Los Angeles.
For the movies, you mean?
Yeah. Also, it's...
Theater's eclipsed by the movies there?
I think it's a town about... I mean, culture and a community are very interesting synergy about why they attract each other. Los Angeles is a town about a job, one industry, basically. Television being a spin-off of it. It's there because of that industry. It's not there because 2 rivers cross or a major artery and a river cross. It's there because that's where the parking lot was.
1981, when you first came here permanently, if you ask most people in America, they'd say San Diego is a Navy town. It wasn't the place that you would associate the crossroads of culture and great theater. Even though the Globe had been here doing great work for years, it didn't seem to be known too much outside theater circles.
But you have to remember that in 1935, when the Pacific Exposition happened, and this little itinerant group of Shakespearean actors came down here and performed their 90-minute or their 50-minute Shakespeares or whatever the heck they were out in the open air, some resonant chord was struck here. And when the exposition folded, the community wanted that theater. Theater is a habit. Nobody wanders into the theater. You're taken to the theater. Your parents take you, an educator takes you, an uncle, a family friend, somebody takes you to the theater. And if that's your poison, nothing else quite does it. And for all that time, whatever the parameters of San Diego were at that time, they were theater goers. Mm-hmm. And for a community that pure, that isolated, if you wish, because it did seem to be protected in the 80s from the outside world. That airstrip was still as short as it is now. It was conveniently difficult to get in here, and I think that's deliberate.
So maybe Shakespeare can survive in a place where the air traffic is less, and you can...
Well, yes, air traffic is a problem with Shakespeare, as you probably know. But it was very interesting. There was a habit. And I knew that. I had directed here. I had also directed, at Craig's insistence, the community actors, not just the professional actors. He had me come just at that time when I did Porgy and Bess and do an Our Town, which I insisted he play the lead in. And he was unforgettable. Unforgettable. It's one of the great experiences of my life. And a really beautiful production, too, I'm happy to say, that stands up within memory. So I knew the community, and I knew that they had basically an intrinsic passion for theater. So I knew I could come here and find a willing audience. I didn't care what kind of audience, and I didn't care really that much about where the community was at that time. But I did know that there was an appetite for the kind of work that I love to do.
Was Jack O'Brien at that time a fully developed talent looking for a stage, or were you, did you have, looking back on it, strengths and weaknesses that you'd work out over the next decade or two?
I'm sure I had strengths and weaknesses, that's no doubt. What I always have, is a kind of dangerously rampant enthusiasm. You know, I mean, it's like, whoa! I'm just a positive guy, and I love this work. I've always loved it. I keep wondering why I'm one of the last survivors of my tenureship, of my graduating class, to still be in the seat. And it's because I love it. I love doing it. And so that enthusiasm overrode, I think, the apparent weaknesses. The other interesting thing about this, Chris, is that Craig saw in me, see, I was a musical comedy kid. I came from the musical comedy mentality. I wanted to be a lyricist.
You were singing on pianos when you were 5 years old.
I was singing at 5 years old, right, for anyone who would listen to me. Played piano by ear, did my own little ditties, made up songs. My dad had them recorded and sent to his appalled friends, I'm sure. But no, I was on my way, but in a very different vein from what I've ended up in. And Craig saw, I think, the wisdom, the cross-pollination of somebody who's basically a showbiz guy, and the classics.
Why the step from the stage to off stage and directing? If you were a kid, you were being tooled for the stage. Did you lose?
My hair. I lost my hair.
Oh, they can do things like that.
No, it's true. The Beatles came in, my hair went out. Literally at the same time. It was traumatic beyond belief. I mean, I started going bald at 20, 21 years old. And so, even though you can compensate, what it does for your inside is amazing at that age, when you're in your early 20s.
Really?
I think so. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, when you're sort of coming into your fulsomeness as a male acting commodity, and you suddenly see yourself aging literally as you shave. You think to yourself, gee, maybe not. Maybe I won't be acting. That's one reason. Number two, I have a restless mind, and I was writing all the time, and I was learning all the time, and I'm not sure that I have the sort of Zen-like patience to be an actor. I love discovery, but I don't like maintenance.
Mm-hmm. So you found, you've been described as an actor's director, somebody that the actors really enjoy working for, and maybe it's the enthusiasm, or maybe you, having been sort of raised as a child with their sensibility, you can understand them more. But do you think that helped you keep the enthusiasm into your sixth decade now? Probably. I mean, I love actors. I love them. I love watching them. I love turning them on. Can you be a director and not love actors? Yes, I think so. A successful one? I don't know. There are different kinds of directors. There are directors who actually work in a climate of terror. Oh yes, John Dexter was one of them. God rest his soul, but he's famous. He was terrifying. And the climate was one of icy concentration and real fear. Most choreographers who develop into directors are not exactly cuddly people, because there's only one way to do the dance step. Your hand goes there, you know what I mean? And so there's no room for error. Do it the way I want it. And there is something about that. I'm the other end of the spectrum. And so, and also, I have an actor's instinct. I know
what it feels like to make the transition.
Will you see in the final work on stage some elements of an actor's input that you might not have gone to, it may not have been what you thought of or what you would have done, but you appreciated and gave them a little room in the production, or do you slowly cajole them back to the wisdom of your way of doing it?
I always tell young directors that I'm working with, I always know how to get there. I'll get you there. I know, if I know how to tell the story, I know how to fix you. I know how to make you work so that we're all doing the right thing. I'm sure I can give you what you need to perform. What I really like to do is use that last, because knowing where I would like to go, or I think we should go, then the cool thing is to say, okay, I know this, you don't. What's going to happen to you inside this shape? And that's where the actors find their freedom and their creativity. And then, yes, inevitably, I get something very different from what I imagined. I think it's much more interesting when there's more of us playing than just me.
Some actors are known, maybe it's more Hollywood than theater, to being prickly characters and difficult. How do you handle someone like that, or do you find ways of not having to handle people like that?
It's good. I haven't had a real confrontation in a very long time. I think actors, I want people to believe this, but I think they know that I'm on their side. That basically I want them to be good. And I think the one thing I've learned how to do in my decades of work is to create a climate in which everything is possible, where they're really comfortable. I'm not challenging in an invasive way. I'm not cruel. I'm very, very nourishing and very positive.
How did you get from the actor you could pick up in LA and shape to starting to get the Marcia Masons of the world and people take that trip to San Diego and try out?
I had the great postgraduate career of my generation because I was the only assistant that the APA repertory, APA/Phoenix, had. This is Ellis Rabb, Rosemary Harris, Nancy Marchand, Paul Sperrer, Will Geer, I mean, amazing, Keen Curtis, amazing people. And the directors were John Houseman, Eva Le Gallienne, Stephen Porter, Alan Schneider, and Ellis Rabb, my mentor. For 6 years, I was the only assistant they had. I was everybody's assistant. So I would take their notes. And I learned to look at the play through 5 sets of eyes because they saw different things. And in doing that, I had to give notes occasionally. So it was like a party game. I had to give notes in the style of Miss Le Gallienne or Houseman or Stephen. And they don't speak alike. Ellis Rabb would see the show differently from Alan Schneider. And I would have to learn this. They would go away on their, Ellis would leave the company. And there's Rosemary Harris and Nancy Marchand and, all of these phenomenal people. And I would say, Ellis, tell them I'm going to give them notes. And he would say wisely, no. They'll know when you're ready to give them. And I thought, this is like some Zen experience. I have to figure out how to go to Rosemary Harris and say, you're strident, or words to that effect. You're swinging your mallet. You're working too hard. Why are you doing this? But you can't say that to Rosemary Harris, particularly when you're 24 years old. So it took months for me to find the way to back around these major people and tug their metaphoric elbow and simply say, I was just wondering. I don't think this means anything, but that in that one scene, I just wondered if that's what you really meant to do, or words to that effect. And they, instead of thinking, well, who the hell are you? They would say, what, darling? I'm sorry, I can't hear you, And then little by little, I learned how to do this, how to approach those egos tenderly, but with truth. You cannot lie. You can be liked if you flatter them, but you can't be good. And it was a lifetime, lesson.
If you lie, they find out.
Yeah.
As the show goes a direction.
And they learn to hate you because you didn't tell them the truth, basically.
So you built your reputation gently telling the truth to actors.
I think so.
San Diego.
I think so.
And then your reputation started growing, and you started drawing talents to the San Diego stage that weren't here before or as frequently. Or did theater start changing to start drawing that connection between New York and the regional theaters that we find today?
Well, it was a gradual process, I think. I think we've all grown up over the last 15 or 20 years in an interesting way.
The regional theaters?
Yes, and I think that we have the people who've worked predominantly. See, I've always been attached to a company. I'm a company guy. Mm-hmm. And all of my growth has been within the confines of a company philosophy, as opposed to just a gun for hire. I've always worked with a group of people or that was producing a certain kind of product. And I'm very comfortable that way, and I believe in that.
Jack, since you joined the Globe, I think one thing you can notice is the range of work that's happened, that has changed a little bit from not just the commercial work from New York, but also a little bit more attention maybe to the community. I know that my own son's first theatrical experience, or one of them, was seeing your Grinch, and it reminded me of the importance of theater's role to the whole community, not just the intelligentsia. Was that what you were thinking about?
Oh, are you kidding? I mean, I don't know what your first experience was, but I bet it wasn't the Grinch.
No.
And mine wasn't either. I mean, I had a very humiliating first kind of leveling first experience with this one bizarre group of probably rampant alcoholics called the Clare Tree Major Players in the 40s and the 50s that went through the Midwest doing little children's plays in movie theaters, And that was my first live experience. We were all taken to the theater and seen something that was basically, cotton costumes and broomsticks and cardboard stuff. And I thought, when this opportunity came, because I had been spending some time with Audrey Geisel, and she had a property that wasn't the Grinch, that she was sort of interested in my taking a look at. And I thought, ooh, this could be interesting, because we'd not done anything with the kids in the community. And I was beginning to think, wait a minute, where's this new audience going to come from if we don't start really actively dealing with this? And then I don't even know, the tumblers all fell together because Zeusical was being done. Mm-hmm. They had the rights to everything. She got this great idea that the Grinch should be here for Christmas and that we should do it. And we took it really seriously. We went right back to the book and used only the colors, the line, the idea that Ted had used in the book, which was 3-color process, because it was just after the Second World War. And so it was only red, black, and white, and obviously pink. That's all you had. So we were determined to actually replicate that on stage. But I was determined that I was going to throw every bit of stagecraft I knew how to do at these kids, saying, if the hook stuck in me with the Clare Tree Major Players, if I showed them black on black magic, if I used puppetry, if I used audience participation, if I could deliver a coup de théâtre, such as it snows inside the theater, I went nuts. We packed into that 62 or 63 minutes every bit of artistry, theater, authentic theater artistry, not so much projections, not film, but the kind of things that have been going on since Aeschylus, basically, that work in the theater. We packed them all into that. And I thought, I bet this is a real punch for these little minds to suddenly say, wow, I think I'll put my video game down now and look at that. I said to Audrey, I was having breakfast with her this morning, I said, I have this feeling that the longest run of anything I ever will have done will be The Grinch.
Jack's Mousetrap.
Wouldn't that be cool?
One of the dynamics is that a regional theater and a regional communities like this are always worried about the talent pool, and they see, well, Jack, we brought him here, we got him his all the experience, and now he's playing on the national and international scene. You're the first American to direct at the National in London just recently. You've won a Tony for Hairspray, which was started in Seattle and went to New York and will come back here as a Broadway San Diego performance. But do you think some of the worries is that we're going to lose our Jack?
Oh, I'm not worried. No, I guess, but I have to tell you, I got off the plane in 1981 on the 14th of January to a report that the National Endowment didn't think I was going to stay in this job more than 6 months. That's 21 years ago. People have said he's leaving the Globe. Mm-hmm. And I haven't left the Globe. So I don't pay any attention to that, frankly. I really don't. I mean, I think, if I were not well served, if by this community, and vice versa, yeah, I would probably move on. But where would you move on from San Diego? I mean, what other job would you like to have if this is the job you like?
Well, the industry still can, in New York, can still support somebody living in Connecticut and on the Upper West Side and doing all his work there.
Yes, but the creative work isn't done there. And also, again, that's not a company. I mean, if you grew up in a company, you are a company man. And the interesting thing now about the opportunities that are being offered me is they have allowed me the kind of growth, and I've been aware of this. Again, I want this. I've said it. Do I have to retire? Is it really either or? Or is there another place for this community, for theater in this community, to go? What is the consequence of a major regional theater once it reaches a certain level? Do you just repeat yourself, or is there something else for us to do?
I've been wondering, you and I have talked in the past about that very question. If New York is now the sort of commercial repository of great things developed elsewhere to some degree, what is the model for the future of a regional theater like a town like this? Should San Diego, instead of, or in addition to looking at new sports facilities, be looking at this unique place? It's carved for itself in part through your work and Craig's work and Dez's work at the La Jolla Playhouse, but and start thinking about the longer range for developing that side of the community.
It's one of the reasons why I have backed off the responsibility to be the guy choosing and doing all the work here. I need to be able to think philosophically about what we do now. Look, when I came here in 1981, there was a template that Craig had created, which did classical work in the summer, it did community, basically service work in the winter. There was a certain range of plays that were done. They were commercial plays yielding into something a little bit more sophisticated. It was a really interesting situation. It was a really interesting template for a theater. And I really wanted to sort of see where that could grow and how that would mature, what might happen with it. And that's basically the ride I'm on. Now I think, okay, now, I've had 20 odd years, 20 some years here, doing this work, and now there's another place for us to be. There is another philosophy that should spin off in terms of the community's responsibility, in terms of what we're able to accomplish, in terms of what our respective roles are. I'm fascinated by that.
Is the base of support for the arts in the community broad enough to demand? I think you've talked in the past about wanting a national-like theater on the waterfront in San Diego with an opera house next door and a symphony next door to that, and really being, in some ways, the centrifugal force of regional theater on the West Coast and the creative center of it. What would it take for that vision, besides the Crocs, the Copleys, and some very wealthy people to put up $400 million or $500 million.
It takes a lot of enthusiasm, that's for sure. It takes basically the demand to do it. It takes the insistence that it's important. It takes convincing people that we are growing whether we like it or not. And we do like it. We are attracted to it. Yes, it takes some big donors, no question about it. But what we are lacking often is vision. It's what we are lacking politically for my money in the world today. We have kinds of leaders, but are they the leaders you really want to follow? And are they laying down a philosophy that appeals to you? I mean, that goes in all aspects of our lives. And what I'm trying to sort of get in touch with and make a little bit more universal is what we want to be. San Francisco is pretty much what it is. So is Los Angeles. The growth market for art, the growth market, the community growth market, is curiously non-developed here, although it's wildly potential. And I want to get behind that and see how far we can go, to see exactly what kind of dreams are left to dream here that are realizable.
Mm-hmm. And so your intentions are to, you've sort of become a man of the theater. You would work in London and New York. You live in both places. You travel around a lot. Is that what you see into your 70s?
I guess so. I have no rear view mirror, by the way. I mean, if you ask me what plays I did 2 years ago or who was in them, I will absolutely go sky high. I have no idea. I'm only looking out in front because as the guy who has for 20 years been feeding that mill of what do we do next season and who's going to be in them, that's based, I've always felt that my creative antenna are out about 10 months. They're not really behind. So I'm not very good at that kind of clocking. What I am sort of good at is feeling which way it wants to go and refusing not to go with it, basically.
Do you write anymore?
I write all the time. I write, I do journals. I've been doing them since the 80s. I don't know what to do about this. Now they're so vast. I mean, I write like once a week, at least, sometimes more frequently. When you write a journal, the sort of Pepsian thing keeps popping up. Is this, what are you doing this for? I'll be perfectly frank, I do it mostly for therapy. It's the way I objectify failure, success, love, loss, grief, all of the things that have happened to me. I try to put them in context. And also, this is a dangerous thing to say, but I'm very funny. I mean, I'm funny to myself. I don't think
you kill you.
I do absolutely kill me.
Others too, I think.
Well, occasionally, but I mean, a lot me. I mean, some of my best stuff no one hears because it's just mine. So it's an opportunity for me to do that. Now they're like, I'm in my 10th volume of these things now, and recently a volume is now a year. It was stretched into more than that, but they've evolved over these 20 years. And I think they're unwieldy. I feel like this huge albatross. I can't stop writing them. I can't imagine anybody reading them.
Do them at night before bed?
No, I do. I write like once a week. I write, my best stuff is in the morning. I mean, I go to sleep at night. I'm a big one on getting to sleep. I fortunately am able to go to sleep without any help. I get tired, you'll be amazed to know, and I sort of fall down and go to sleep and get up the next morning. I'm talking like this when I wake up. In complete paragraphs. But that's when I do my best work, so I love to get up early. I love to get a cup of coffee in me, feed the dogs, and then sit down and let it go.
Looking over your curriculum vitae and the list of shows you're doing and the talking to other actors and directors around the country who've worked with you, it's hard to think of you having much time for introspection about yourself or even a private life of much.
It's been
You're
hard.
just going and going and going all the time.
It's been hard.
How do you carve out time to make sure you're not wearing Jack out? I'm
not doing it very well right now, and it's because of the the confluence of the award and the musical, which is taking an enormous amount of time, and the opportunities like the National that popped right up at the same time. I'm trying to manage them because it's suddenly a very different pattern, and it's a different investment of energy. And like I'm dangerously not at the gym right now, which is very bad for me because it makes me unhappy, and it's not healthy either. But I'm traveling so much that it's very hard to deal with that, and I'm trying to remanage that. I haven't swung a golf club in 2 years, which is really important to me, and I love it. I mean, some of these aspects of my own relaxation have sort of gone, and I've got to get them back. I'm not happy with that at all.
It's talking to friends around the country that are in your line of work. They sort of have looked at the recent celebration of you as both well-deserved, but also somewhat many years past due, so that seeing you distracted by things like a Tony Award for this particular show, as one young director friend of mine back east said, he was the bomb 20 years ago, and I think that's a good thing, being the bomb. But now the rest of the country is catching up to it, and the awards programs are catching up to it. And he was expressing hope that you wouldn't lose the focus on the great work you did back then that probably was worthy of Tonys too. Didn't get it, but and didn't stop doing that as the international theater world skirts you from here to there. And
two things. I try not to take myself too seriously. I mean, all of that is lovely and lovely to hear, but I really try not to take myself too seriously. The other thing is, I don't think too much about it, because I think the great peril of any success or any career or any impetus is to become self-conscious about it and worry about those kinds of things. I'm on some sort of ride, Chris, and you're quite right. 20 years into it, I'm astonished that I'm still turning over the earth, that people are excited about the product, that there is even the whisper of something called the great work you have done in the past. I don't even want to know what that sentence means. I don't want to go anywhere near it. It sounds just appalling to me, But so I think the whole thing is, if I can stay innocent in the expression of it, in the opportunities that are given to me, in the relationships that I've been able to make work under those circumstances, I've got my toes gripped into the earth to do that, and that's about all I know how to do.
Hairspray is a great show, very fun, but is it your best work in your estimation?
No, it's indicative of the kind of celebration that I like to bring to my work. And there is unquestionably an element in Hairspray that is astonishing, that I understand in retrospect I must have brought to the work, which is basically, wait a minute, take it seriously, right? It's funny, but just a minute, take it seriously, which is what we did. That part I'm very proud of, but I didn't see that musical coming, the success. I didn't. Some very wise people think that the best work I did was probably on the Full Monty, in terms of the richness of character and the delicacy of what we were trying to accomplish.
What are friends for? Who else is going to help you kill yourself? Let's find a rock, a big-ass rock, or maybe something like a cinder block is better. I'll hoist it up and drop it on your face, my buddy. Just before the lights go out, you'll see my smile and you'll know you've got a friend with a rock. Who cares? A big-ass rock.
That's for other people to do. I'm just so pleased that I keep getting these opportunities. And unlike many of my colleagues, they're so rangy. And that's the gift that San Diego gave to me.
You can do Shakespeare and the Full Monty.
I'm going back to do this Henry Ford at Lincoln Center with all of these people this fall. New York has never seen my classical work, ever, except for, 16 minutes of 2 Shakespearean actors where we actually did some Macbeth, but basically they've never seen it.
What is, you don't like to talk about yourself a whole lot on this, but on your style, but how would you describe your Shakespeare, I think it's hard for the average person to understand the difference between one director's approach to Julius Caesar or Henry or one of the classics compared to another. How would you characterize your, when you say they haven't seen mine back in New York, what do you think they'll see of yours?
You son of a gun. Well, for one thing, 20 years, 22, 30 years of experience doing Shakespeare, whatever that is. I've done a ton of it. I'm not sure that I haven't done more Shakespeare than anybody in my category. I'm not sure. Garland Wright is now dead. Mark Lamos has done quite a bit. But you see, we've done 2 every year. No other theater's doing that. So over the years, I've done 2 Hamlets, 2 Lears, 2 Twelfth Nights, 2 Midsummer Night's Dreams. I'm on my 2 Othellos. I'm on my 2nd wind with a lot of these great plays that most directors in the country only get to do 1. So whatever that means, there's a certain amount of simple relaxation about the way I do Shakespeare. It's text-oriented. It has to do with the way the text flows and goes to the audience. And I think probably, as I get older, it's more humanistic. I'm less interested in the greatness of it, and I'm much more interested in the intimacy of it. And I think that's true of all my work now. The only revivals I really want to do are the Shakespeare's. Because I'd rather do new work now. I think of the time left to me, I really need to be working not in the past, but in the present and in the future.
But to go back to the past one more time, if I said in your earlier days or just looking the entire career, is there a particular show that you can remember that stands out, that comes out of the ether of memory as one that
There's several.
meant a lot to you?
There are several. Porgy meant a lot to me.
Artistically, did you learn something in doing that?
I learned the sort of potential size of my own passion. I realized, because I wasn't an American black sort of cultural figure, and yet they poured themselves into me. First of all, I was the first person to touch that piece for over 20 years who hadn't put it in the Bobby Breen, template of Warfield and Leontine Price and that crowd. That sort of that's what you did with Porgy and Bess. And so they had stories, they had religious moments, they had community things that they wanted to express in the music, and I was a receptacle for that. And so it enlarged me in an extraordinary way. I'm not sure I didn't learn more from Porgy and Bess than anything else I ever did, because I was allowed to go someplace and to be a member of a community that would not ordinarily accept me. I was the whitest person you ever saw in that crowd. That one, Craig's Our Town, the Campbell Scott Hamlet, Invention of Love.
Invention of Love was an interesting show in that it sort of did more for your reputation in losing the Tony Award that year than winning it might have. You became sort of almost everybody in theater thought it was the show that surprised that year. It was the one that the direction really made the difference, and and that you were wronged. You were truly aggrieved. Now you were the.
It was a lovely position.
Yeah, it is.
You couldn't go wrong.
Yeah.
No, I know. It was. They're right. And excuse me, I lost the Tony that year to my dear, beloved friend, Dan Sullivan, who's Julius Caesar right now is knocking everybody dead at the Globe. That's how close we are. And I looked at his proof prior to my Invention of Love and said to my partner at the time, who was still alive, that is great direction. And if you don't think it is, look at somebody else's production of Proof and tell me that isn't great direction. But these awards are not, they're not about value or just desserts. They're about politics. And Proof was going on the road, and The Invention of Love was not. So it was perfectly understandable that the road wanted a Tony label on that show. And those voters, of which are a huge part of the Tony voters, are out of town. They voted for the show that was coming to their theater.
There's a degree to which, I guess, being considered for those awards shows a lifetime of achievement.
I think so.
To get there. That winning it is nice, but it's sort of like a Pulitzer. It's you had to do 30 years of hard work at small places to get to the places that are considered for that sort of award.
It's a grab bag.
But the night came,
and
you had, America's right now really into award shows, and it's award shows were maybe the first reality TV shows when you think about it.
I'm sure that's true.
And you're sitting there all these years after leaving New York to go to San Diego, surrounded by people, many of whom never left New York and never would leave New York. And there has to be some element of sort of satisfaction that you took the road less traveled, yet you ended up right back here, and this is your night, and some of the people who never left, went north of 125th Street, had this, saw you acknowledged for not just that show, Hairspray, but for a lifetime achievement. Was it the bomb, as they said?
It's pretty good. It was pretty good. I was riding a pretty big elephant with Hairspray because, it had a lot of stuff behind it. But yeah, it never occurred to me that I would stand up at the end of any significant evening and sing a chorus of my way. But it's odd to think that I can. I have not taken the obvious road. And yes, Mr. Frost, that has made all the difference. It's great. It's been, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I think this is the century of both and, not either or. And I think there's no reason at all why we can't enlarge our horizons and accommodate travel. And for me to go to London and for London to come to San Diego, why shouldn't we? We've earned the right. I'm a big nationalist. I'm a big proponent of American theater artists and their value. I think we're embarrassed by our cultural icons in this country. I think that we're not convinced that they rank as the sports figures and the science figures do. And I think it's too bad because, quite frankly, there are many of my colleagues are way up there with anything that anybody else is doing in the world. And we're not swift to acknowledge them as ours. And it was particularly gratifying to me at the Tonys because I felt, and I've said this repeatedly, that I was carrying a lot of colors on my back. And there were a lot of people in this community who rightfully identified with that win as not just being mine, but being ours.
It was also an interesting night historically in that it was the first, they say, the first time two men kissed on stage on national TV.
I know.
And the next man up on the podium afterwards said, "Look at that, it's amazing. Two men kissing on TV," and it went out live over the air. But it was sort of must have had some resonance for you in your own life.
It did.
That you lived your personal life as you've always been, as many people of your generation have been, very more quiet and private about something that is usually private. But here you are all these years later from a conservative town in the West Coast getting your award on a night when there was sort of an opening to the gay life in theater. And I wondered if did that occur to you amid your own personal victory that night?
Oh, it did. It absolutely did. It's one of the lovely things about getting this at this time in my life because I don't think of myself as any particular category of artist as opposed to a director. And I think that my own personal life, whatever it is, as long as it's happy and enriching, is my own business. But it's become other people's business in an odd way. And it wasn't until my partner died unexpectedly that I felt the need to suddenly say, wait a minute, I'm also going through a lot of crap here. Mm-hmm. And I have every right not to flaunt it, but you mustn't not acknowledge that I'm in pain. And so that night with those guys who are so hilarious anyway, sort of saying, this is it. We are 20 years into this relationship. The hell with you. This is also a great tribute to any relationship that has survived a creativity and produced something as spontaneous and joyous as Hairspray. So there was a sense of saying, yeah, right, this is now, finally, at this age, it's okay.
And the Supreme Court decision a few months later,
Staggering.
made it a sort of confluence of issues that, in an odd way, made this theater year, your award, that show, and that decision, at least for this community, I think, resonate particularly strong.
It's just a matter of good taste, isn't it? I mean, anything that is honorably dealt with in a tasteful way should be acceptable to a civilized society. Anything that is rude and in your face and gratuitous and insulting should not. And I think that's the two sides of the coin.
You mentioned a few months ago to me that it was the death of your partner that one of your reactions to that was just to throw yourself into as much work as you could. And look at the work you threw yourself into.
I know.
Full Monty, the Invention, Hairspray now, Henry IV, other shows.
His Girl
well.
Friday, I know. It's dazzling.
Do you
equate them? Well, I don't know. They say that the greatest thing you can hope for is to find yourself living, as they say politely, in the moment. And if somebody you loved very much was suddenly taken from you for no reason, because no illness, nothing, just gone, you suddenly realize how fragile life is. And what arrogance for us to think we have another whatever.
But Jack, most people's reactions to that is introspection, quiet, not throwing yourself more. Is this just the dark Irish in you that said, amid those feelings, I'm going out there again, and I'm going to, I'm not backing down, I'm not crawling off to San Diego and just staying there and doing some Shakespeare and taking long walks in the park?
I'm not that guy, Chris. I can't lie about that. I'm not that guy. I'm in the thrall of something that is driving me, that makes me very happy, that made Jim very happy, that makes audiences very happy. It's a gift. It's not mine to flaunt, but it's mine to waste, because this is my time. And so my rather than go inside, I would rather embrace the time I have with all the passion and enthusiasm I have and do my best. And then I can't do any better than that, I don't think. And it's a nice thing to say about him. All these notches on the wall, that statuette, that has a great deal to do with not just one part of my life, but all of my life. This community, that relationship, the opportunities that I've had. I'm very aware of how lucky I am.
Your dad, too, was a sort of, it sounded like a gregarious, outgoing Irish guy who you maybe see the apple not falling so far from the tree. Do you think about him at all as you get older?
Oh, yeah.
Are you looking more like him?
Yes, I am. There are two photographs of Dad and me in hats and coats where you think, whoa! He was much older than my mother, and infinitely in his older years, mature years, when I was a kid. So he died when I was 18, and I was just getting to know him on that level. He was a great guy and hilariously funny, but really interesting. Very interesting guy. Very popular, very engaging, very kinetic. And I reflected this morning as I woke up, now that I'm 64. Dad died when he was 63. My mother when she was 67. I'm in that isthmus when between when they left. Mm-hmm. And I'm not feeling mortality necessarily, but I'm feeling an awareness of what it would be like now if I suddenly ceased to be, and what it must have felt like for them. Because now, I mean, that in the 50s and 60s were up there. Now they're not. Now I'm a kid, you know, so. But I miss him. And I've chased him all my life. John Houseman, that relationship. Craig, in a sense, is another father to me. I'm very mentor-oriented. I've always been fascinated by these powerful older guys who had things to tell me, because I didn't think I got quite enough from my dad.
So we can look forward to Jack in his 70s and Jack in his 80s. Craig Knoll is your mentor now, and you're going to outlive him.
That's the other great thing about having Craig with me all this time, is no matter what I've accomplished in this community, there's Craig. And you think to yourself, you know, yeah, so you've done 20 years. He's done 60. So it keeps you humble, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, Jack, this has been great visiting with you, and it's been a great run. The kid is hot, as you've said a few times, and we look forward to seeing how hot it gets in the next few years, and we'll be watching.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Remember me. Doesn't matter where you'll be, especially when the snow is falling. I'll be calling. Everybody. Really far apart. Champagne. To my heart. This is how we'll always stay. I stand up for acclaimed.
So he brought back the toys and the food for the feast.
Oops.
And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast.
This will be our song. You and I belong. Heart to heart together. Right.
There's 2 minutes of the show.
And then the longest curtain call in theater history begins.